research study looking at Black women's motivations to attend historically Black college. And this research came about mainly because I am a proud HBCU alum, and also being a professor at Spelman College, thinking about even now how there is still this debate or question whether or not HBCUs are still relevant and necessary. And so I would argue that they are, in essence, that HBCUs are the top producers of our Black doctors and dentists. For instance, HBCUs produce 70% of doctors and dentists, 50% of our engineers, and 35% of our lawyers. And this can have an impact particularly on our economy. And also we can think about that the specific culture of a HBCU has mainstream influence. Okay. And if we can think about Beyonce's performance at Coachella, and I stayed up to watch this, and that her whole performance was a tribute to the HBCU culture. And then historically, people of African descent and women were thought to be intellectually unfit. And because of that, we see the emergence of women's institutions, particularly in 1836 with Wesleyan, and the emergence of HBCUs, the first one in 1837, Cheney University here in Pennsylvania. And even from there, Black women were denied entry into some of those institutions. So from there emerged historically Black college universities for women. So there are two, Bennett College and Spelman College. And I would say that due to the social and racial climate that we're in today, particularly thinking about within the past couple of years, the protests among Black students across different predominantly white institutions of the desire to want and need more Black faculty and courses surrounding the Black experience and Black history. It's interesting that HBCUs have been doing this for over 200 years. But particularly, I think because of, once again, the racial and social climate, that we're seeing an increase in enrollment in applications to HBCUs. Particularly within the past year, Spelman received its record number of 9,000 applicants. And so even though there is an increase in applications to HBCUs, there's still very few research in terms of what are the students' motivations and desire to attend this particular institution. And this was an article last year that was in the New York Times, and it was from a student who's a sophomore at Spelman College. And particularly, she wrote about why she chose to attend the HBCU. So she said, this was something powerful about attending an institution that was built for you. Most colleges are built for white students, or at least with only white students in mind. At Spelman, I found a place for myself in the curriculum and an opening to learn what it means to be me. And so there is some research, but limited research in terms of Black students' motivations to attend an HBCU, and then also women's motivations to attend a women's institution. So particularly, there's two main reasons why Black students are interested in attending an HBCU. One, to enhance their racial identity development, but then also to be surrounded by other students that look like them. And the primary reasons why women decide to attend women's institutions to enhance their gender identity, and also, for instance, have access to role models. But once again, what's missing from the literature is Black women's motivations to attend a particular college, but specifically a HBCU for women. And research shows that identity-related factors could contribute to Black students' decision to attend a particular institution. So when we think about the intersection of race and gender identity, particularly among Black women, several research supports the notion that Black women, their two most salient identities are their racial and gender identities relative to other identities. And also this idea that maybe in terms of thinking about their identity development, that first they think about their racial identity, then their gender identity, and then lastly, the intersection of both. And then also there's research which shows the support for the relationship between identity-related factors and college choice, particularly for attending HBCU among Black students. Particularly, there has been few studies, but Van Camp is one of the scholars that has looked at Black students' decisions to attend a HBCU. That was published in 2009. And he looked at the association between racial centrality, so the extent to which one's racial identity is an important part of their overall self-image, and also race-related reasons for attending HBCU. So an example, that classes focus on racial issues. So it's possible that the intersection of racial centrality and gender centrality may be important factors in Black women's decisions to attend a HBCU for women. So what we did was we conducted an online survey that we administered to roughly 130 incoming freshmen at HBCU for women. So they completed the survey before they started classes, so before they could experience the HBCU culture. And so we measured racial centrality using the MIBI, the multidimensional inventory of Black identity. So in general, being Black is an important part of my self-image. And we also measured gender centrality from adaptation from that measurement. So in general, being a woman is an important part of my self-image. And then also to measure or look at reasons for college choice, we did look at other reasons in addition to race, so academic, financial, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to focus on race-related reasons. And so a sample item from that includes, to what extent did you come to Spelman College because you wanted to develop your racial identity? So we conduct hierarchical multiple regression analyses to test the moderating effects of these variables. And so first looking at the main effects, we saw that higher racial centrality was associated with higher levels of race-related reasons for attending a HBCU for women. However, we did not see a significant relationship in looking at gender centrality on race-related reasons. Okay. And once again, we were really interested in looking at the interaction between the two. We saw that there was a significant interaction on racial centrality and gender centrality and race-related reasons for attending a HBCU. And particularly thinking about the simple main effect of racial centrality on race-related reasons among participants who have both high and low gender centrality, we saw that as their racial centrality increased, so did their race-related reasons for attending a HBCU. And then also looking at the strength of that relationship, particularly comparing those with low and high racial, centrality, we saw that that relationship was the strongest for those who had lower levels of gender centrality. And then once again, there was not a significant effect of gender centrality looking at both high and low racial centrality in predicting race-related reasons. So once again, this is one of the few studies that have used an intersectional approach to look at gender centrality and racial centrality and race-related reasons to attending a HBCU. And so this was our first step in using an intersectional approach to look at one of their stated identities, which was race-related reasons. So we conducted a similar study, now focusing on race and gender-related reasons for attending a HBCU for women. So our N size is relatively low, so we are anticipating to collect more data in the fall. But the same process, we have the same measurements, racial centrality, gender centrality, and then we added the gender-related reasons and then also the race and gender-related reasons for attending HBCU for women. So for instance, for the gender-related reasons, the sample item included the classes offered have a gender focus. And the race and gender-related reasons is it is an environment that provides a space for self-expression for Black women. So what we saw is that the same or similar results in study one, that higher racial centrality was associated with higher levels of race-related reasons for attending HBCU, but there was no significant relationship for gender centrality, and the interaction this time was not significant. Looking at gender-related reasons for college choice, we did not find any significant findings. And then for the race and gender-related reasons, we saw that, once again, higher racial centrality was associated with higher levels of race and gender-related reasons for attending HBCU for women. and there was no significance for gender centrality or the interaction between racial centrality and gender centrality. And so what this speaks to the idea that when Black women are deciding to apply or to attend an HBCU for women, they're not coming to the institution solely because it's a women's institution, but they're really thinking about the intersection and the fact that it's an HBCU specifically for women. And that they relied heavily on their racial and gender identity in making these decisions, but more so on their racial identity. And these findings are in alignment with the previous research, particularly looking at the association between centrality and reasons for college choice, particularly among Black students wanting to attend an HBCU. And this also provides support that HBCUs provide an environment and space for common experiences, and also a space where students can develop their positive identities. And then also this research has implications for recruiting Black women, that there are many HBCUs are successful in recruiting and retaining Black students, particularly Black women, though unfortunately due to funding, that there are a lot of HBCUs that are on the verge of closing. And so maybe this research can support in some assistance in terms of how to recruit more students into these universities. And some of the limitations and future directions. So this study was cross-sectional, and so future research might want to look at longitudinal studies, particularly looking at how one's racial and gender centrality develops over time as one matriculates through an HBCU. And then also social desirability could have played a role in the findings in terms of maybe the students felt compelled that they had to think very highly about their racial and gender identities because they were entering into an HBCU for women. And then also as maybe other reasons why Black women are deciding to choose these particular type of institution. But overall, this research is one of the first in using an intersectional approach to exploring Black women's motivations to attend college, but particularly HBCU for women. And even though predominantly white institutions are no longer legally allowed to deny Black women entry into these institutions, HBCU for women is still a vital institution, an option for Black women, for attracting and educating Black women who think or perceive that their racial and gender identities are an important part of their self-concept. That's it. Thank you.